What if the most captivating women in Hollywood were not only stunning and talented, but also brave enough to live their truth? In a world where image is everything, these 25 actresses shattered expectations and redefined what it means to be seen. From red carpets to raw confessions, their journeys are bold, beautiful, and unapologetically real. If any of these stories move you, hit like, drop a comment, and don't forget to subscribe for more fearless icons. Now, let's dive into the 25 most dazzling and powerful LGBTQ+ actresses redefining fame in their own way. Before she became a global icon, Angelina Jolie was already setting fire to every rule Hollywood had written about how a woman should look, love, and live. With her piercing eyes, unapologetic tattoos, and unpredictable soul, she captivated not just cameras, but the world. She was fierce, messy, magnetic, and beneath the surface of every red carpet moment was someone completely uninterested in fitting in. At a time when actresses were expected to be silent and polished, Angelina was raw and loud, in the most beautiful way. Her truth broke through in a way few dared to imagine. Jolie openly admitted she had fallen deeply in love with model Jenny Shimizu, even saying she would have married her if things had worked out. This was not gossip. This was her, on the record, back when being openly queer could cost you roles, endorsements, and your place in the industry. But Angelina did not care. She never boxed her desires, never apologized for who she was drawn to. Her bisexuality was not a phase, and it was never hidden behind whispers. It was powerfully, defiantly real. What makes her story unforgettable is not just that she loved freely, but that she did so while standing under the brightest spotlight in the world. She showed millions that embracing your truth does not dim your light, it makes you shine harder. And in an era where queer stories are still being silenced around the world, Angelina's early truth still echoes as a reminder. Being yourself is never the wrong role to play. And if that gave you chills, the next name on this list might just light a fire. She did not come out with fireworks. She came out like a storm rolling in slowly, quietly, and absolutely unstoppable. Kristen Stewart, once known to the world as the mysterious Bella Swan, spent years under the spotlight of a global obsession she never asked for. But behind the reserved glances and quiet interviews was someone wrestling with something deeper than fame, the pressure to live a life that was never truly hers. Hollywood wanted a straight, perfect, girl-next-door heroine. Kristen, however, was never built for that mold. After her high-profile split from Robert Pattinson, she stepped off the pedestal and into her truth. She began dating women, not with fanfare, but with honesty. No grand statements, no PR rollouts, just Kristen, walking hand in hand with her girlfriends, unapologetically herself. She once said in an interview, "I was so nervous to be like, I'm not hiding anything." And in that simple line, she gave voice to countless people navigating the gray areas of identity. She showed us that authenticity is not always loud. Sometimes it is a quiet, steady rebellion. Today, Kristen Stewart is more than an actress. She is an artist, a director, and a symbol of what happens when you stop playing the part others wrote for you. Her queerness is not just a part of her. It is woven into her craft, her presence, and her power. And just when you thought Kristen rewrote the rules, wait until you meet the woman who laughed in their faces while turning the fashion world upside down. She walked onto the runway like she owned the world. And maybe she did. Cara Delevingne was not just another pretty face in fashion. With her bold brows, devil-may-care smirk, and a strut that dared you to look away, she redefined what beauty looked like. But behind the flashing cameras and couture gowns was a young woman questioning everything, especially the expectations placed on her by the world. She never wanted to be anyone's fantasy. She wanted to be real. Cara came out as pansexual with the same energy she brings to everything. Unapologetic, raw, and deeply human. She spoke about loving the soul, not the gender, and opened up about her battles with depression, identity, and the pressure to perform. In a world obsessed with labels, Cara tossed them aside and chose freedom. Her relationships, from Michelle Rodriguez to Ashley Benson, were not publicity stunts, but chapters in her search for something authentic. She let the world watch her fall in love, and more importantly, watch her evolve. Now, whether she is acting in major films or speaking out about mental health, Cara brings her whole self to the table. She is messy, she is magnetic, she is magnificent, and in embracing every wild, imperfect part of herself, she has given millions the courage to do the same. Which of these three icons has surprised or inspired you the most so far? Drop their name in the comments. And stick around, because the next woman brings a fire all her own. In 2016, Amber Rose walked onto the stage at her own slut walk and declared into the mic, "I am a bisexual woman, and I'm done hiding." For anyone who had ever judged her, labeled her, or underestimated her, that was the moment the game changed. Amber did not come out in a quiet interview or a subtle Instagram post. She did it in front of a roaring crowd with unapologetic boldness, turning her truth into a movement. Before that moment, the world mostly knew Amber as the glamorous model, music video star, and controversial ex of Kanye West and Wiz Khalifa. Her body, her looks, her sex appeal, that is what the headlines focused on. But underneath the gloss was a woman who had always lived on her own terms. Amber had been dropping clues for years, speaking about loving women, posting photos with partners of different genders, but it was that single declaration at Slutwalk that fully defined her power. Not just as a sex symbol, but as a voice for sexual freedom, identity, and self-respect. Amber Rose is not everyone's idea of a role model, and that is exactly why she matters. She is raw, she is messy, she is electric, and she uses every platform she touches to tell people, especially women and queer people, that they are allowed to be loud, to be complicated, to be themselves. And speaking of magnetic energy, the next woman on our list might just be Hollywood's most unexpected firecracker. I'm actually pansexual, and I didn't know that. Someone explained to me what that is, and I was like, oh, that's me. That quote came straight from Bella Thorne's heart during an interview in 2019, and like everything else in her life, it was unfiltered, honest, and loud. For Bella, labels were never about boxes, they were about clarity. And as someone who has grown up entirely in front of the camera, finding clarity took guts. From Disney darling to boundary-breaking bombshell, Bella Thorne's transformation has been anything but ordinary. She came out as bisexual in 2016, shaking off her squeaky clean image with a simple tweet, and the internet erupted. But that was only the beginning. As the years passed, Bella explored her identity openly, sometimes clumsily, but always authentically. Her pansexuality, her relationships with men, women, and non-binary individuals all became part of her public evolution. And while tabloids loved the chaos, what stood out was her willingness to own it all. Bella never asked for permission. She made mistakes, she went viral, she got judged, but through it all she remained herself, fierce, fluid, and fearless. She is not just a Gen Z sex symbol, she is a mirror for a generation learning to love beyond labels. And coming up next, we meet a woman who took that same defiance and turned it into something even deeper. In 2021, after years of pain, pressure, and public breakdowns, Demi Lovato shaved their head and everything changed. It was not just a haircut, it was liberation. After surviving addiction, overdoses, and the crushing weight of fame, Demi stood in front of the mirror and stripped away everything that was not real. What remained was someone unafraid to be seen, as queer, as fluid, as human. Demi's journey with identity has never been simple. For years, rumors swirled about their relationships with women, whispers the tabloids turned into clickbait. But it was not until after their powerful documentary Dancing with the Devil that Demi truly opened up. They spoke about being attracted to people of all genders, about not fitting into a binary world. For a former Disney star raised to be America's sweetheart, this was a revolution. Demi did not just come out. They exploded out of the mold the industry built around them. Today, Demi Lovato is no longer trying to please anyone. Their voice, once just a powerhouse for pop hits, has become a rallying cry for mental health, queer rights, and personal truth. They have shown the world that healing is messy, that identity is layered, and that self-love takes work. And if Demi's raw courage moved you, the next woman on our list did something just as bold, but in a way only she could. She never made a big announcement. Instead, she dropped a lyric that sent the internet spinning. In 2019, Ariana Grande released her hit song Monopoly with the line, "I like women and men." No press release, no grand reveal, just a casual, confident declaration wrapped in a pop melody. And for fans around the world, it spoke volumes. Ariana had always been about love. Love for herself, love for others, love for freedom. And this line was her way of saying, love does not need an explanation. Ariana is one of the biggest pop stars of her generation, with a voice that could shake stadiums and a style that defines trends. But behind the ponytail and the platinum hits is someone deeply aware of the responsibility that comes with visibility. She has long used her platform to uplift LGBTQ+ voices, performing at pride events, speaking out after tragedies, and making space for her queer fans in every show, every anthem, every moment. Whether or not she fully identifies with a label, her message is crystal clear. Everyone deserves to love who they love, without shame or boundaries. Grande's subtlety is her power. In a world hungry for labels and headlines, she chose ambiguity and turned it into empowerment. Her presence in this conversation reminds us that queerness is not one size fits all, and visibility can take many forms. And coming up next is a woman who never needed subtlety, because from the very beginning, she made it loud and clear. "12 years old, standing in front of the mirror, and already sure of one thing, she liked girls. While most kids that age were still figuring out school crushes, Ruby Rose had already figured out who she was. That kind of clarity is rare. That kind of confidence? Unstoppable. It was never about shocking the world. It was about surviving it, by being unapologetically real from the start. Before Netflix turned her into a global sensation with Orange Is the New Black, Ruby had already built a career in Australia as a model, DJ, and TV presenter. But her true breakout moment was not scripted. It was in how she showed up in every room, fierce, gender-fluid, unapologetically lesbian, and completely unforgettable. While others tested the water, Ruby dove in. She blurred lines, broke expectations, and gave thousands of queer kids a face they could finally see themselves in. Her roles were bold. Her look was bolder. But her message was always the same. Be whoever the hell you are. Ruby Rose proved that queer women could lead shows, front magazines, and change the world, all while staying true to themselves. And now, from fierce defiance to quiet grace, the next woman on this list shows us that coming out can be just as powerful, even when done with a whisper. It started with a photo, one simple, intimate post of her kissing rapper Angel Hayes. In 2014, Ireland Baldwin hit upload, and the internet lit up. For some, it was shocking. For her, it was simply real. The daughter of Hollywood royalty, Ireland had spent her life in the shadow of celebrity. But in that moment, she stepped into the light, not as Alec Baldwin's daughter, but as a woman choosing to love freely and publicly. The relationship with Angel was not long, but it was bold, passionate, and unapologetically queer. Ireland never made a press tour about it. She never needed to. Her message was clear. This is who I am. Take it or leave it. That kind of quiet defiance spoke louder than any headline. In a world still obsessed with labels, she chose fluidity. In an industry that expects perfection, she chose truth, even if it was messy. Today, Ireland Baldwin continues to forge her own path, as a model, as a mother, and as someone who refuses to live under anyone else's narrative. Her queerness is not her brand. It is part of her story, one she tells without filters or edits. And next, we meet a woman who never needed a viral moment, because her legacy was already being written in every powerful role she played. Why would someone so young and beautiful be with someone twice her age? It was the question whispered in tabloids and screamed across comment sections when Sarah Paulson confirmed her relationship with actress Holland Taylor. But while the world obsessed over the age gap, Sarah had already made up her mind. She was in love, and that was the only thing that mattered. In true Sarah fashion, she addressed the chatter with elegance and zero apologies. Sarah Paulson has always danced to her own rhythm. Known for her gripping performances in American Horror Story and Ratched, she commands attention not just with her talent, but with her fearlessness. When she came out, she did not make a spectacle of it. She simply lived openly, refusing to compromise the intimacy of her truth for the comfort of strangers. Her relationship with Holland Taylor is not just romantic, it is revolutionary. In an industry obsessed with youth and image, Sarah chose substance. She chose love over optics. To this day, she continues to challenge expectations in the roles she plays and the life she leads. Sarah Paulson reminds us that visibility does not always have to be loud to be powerful. And coming up next is a woman who, much like Sarah, broke free from expectations, but did so with a burst of youthful rebellion that turned into something much deeper. She played queens on screen, bold, commanding, untouchable. But when Adelaide Kane came out, it was not in front of a throne. It was on TikTok. A short, simple clip in early 2021 where she looked into the camera and said what so many still struggle to say, "I'm bisexual." There were no elaborate speeches or dramatic reveals, just honesty, quiet, and clear. Adelaide had already built a fan base playing royalty in Reign and fierce roles in Teen Wolf and Once Upon a Time. But off-screen, the pressure to live a scripted life had weighed on her. Coming out was not about making headlines. It was about letting go of fear. And once she did, she turned that courage outward. She became a passionate advocate for marriage equality and spoke out about the need for representation in fantasy and period dramas, genres where queer characters are still often erased. What makes Adelaide's story powerful is not just that she came out, but how she did it, with calm, with grace, and with purpose. She reminded fans that your truth does not need to be loud to be revolutionary. And speaking of fierce, quiet revolutions, the next actress on our list has been pushing boundaries in Hollywood long before most even realized it. She did not come out on a red carpet or in a glossy magazine spread. She did it on Capitol Hill. In 2018, Evan Rachel Wood stood before Congress to testify about abuse survival, and in the middle of that raw, harrowing testimony, she said 6 simple words: "I identify as bisexual and gender fluid." It was not a publicity moment. It was a battle cry. Known for her haunting performances in 13 and Westworld, Evan has never played it safe. She came out to the world long before that testimony, but this time it was different. She was not just telling her truth, she was using it to fight for others. For years, she had dropped hints, spoken out, and lived authentically, even when it cost her roles or drew judgment. But that day on Capitol Hill, she turned her pain into purpose and became one of the most powerful queer voices in Hollywood. Evan Rachel Wood is a reminder that being visible is not always about celebration. Sometimes it is about survival. Her story is not just one of identity, but of resilience, and she continues to push the boundaries of what strength and queerness look like. Up next, we meet an actress whose quiet charisma and undeniable presence have made her one of the most effortlessly magnetic women in film today. I'm attracted to men and also to women. If I bring a woman home, my family's not going to say, oh, that's strange. With that single statement in a 2018 interview, Tessa Thompson broke the mold, not with drama, but with calm, matter-of-fact honesty. It was not a coming-out performance. It was a reminder. Queerness is not always a secret waiting to explode. Sometimes it is just love, quietly lived, deeply felt, and proudly claimed. Tessa had already become a powerhouse in Hollywood by then, starring in Thor, Westworld, and Creed. But it was her off-screen presence that shifted culture. A rising icon for Black queer visibility, she refused to give in to labels or give up complexity. She talked about fluidity, about loving who you love, and about how society's boxes never quite fit her. Rumors about her relationship with singer Janelle Monáe only amplified the conversation. But Tessa never chased headlines. She chased truth. Today, Tessa Thompson is more than a leading lady. She is a cultural force, a fashion icon, a queer trailblazer, and a woman who reminds us that identity does not have to be simplified to be powerful. And now, get ready for a name you may not hear in headlines every day, but whose story is just as fierce, beautiful, and worthy. What happens when a woman tells her husband, "I'm not straight," and she is still deeply in love with him? That moment, shared by Julianne Hough in a raw 2019 interview, flipped the narrative. Here was a ballroom princess, dancing with the stars' sweetheart, living in a seemingly perfect marriage, suddenly redefining her identity in real time. No drama, no scandal, just a quiet revolution behind closed doors that she chose to share with the world. Julianne's confession was not about rebellion, it was about alignment. Finally, living in step with her inner rhythm. She never used a label. She did not need one. What she offered instead was transparency, a portrait of queerness that coexists with love, marriage, and evolving truth. It was complicated, yes, but it was real. And in a culture obsessed with clarity, she embraced complexity instead. Since then, Julianne has continued to open up, not just about her sexuality, but about her journey towards self-love, spirituality, and embodiment. She dances differently now, freer, more grounded, less choreographed. And if you thought queerness only came wrapped in glitter or defiance, wait until you meet the next woman, who carries hers like a crown of quiet strength. A wedding photo. 2 women. No big headline, no dramatic reveal, just elegance, intimacy, and a quiet kind of pride. When British actress and former model Jessica Clarke married her partner, she did not use it as a statement. And yet, that image alone was revolutionary in an industry still unsure how to handle queerness when it is subtle, unapologetic, and beautiful. Before her acting career took flight, Jessica had already conquered the world of high fashion. With sharp cheekbones and commanding presence, she graced runways and campaigns across Europe. But it was not just her beauty that captivated people, it was her openness. Long before it became common to include pronouns in bios or hashtags like "love is love," Jessica was already out, already proud, and already living freely. After her marriage ended in 2012, she never let heartbreak define her. Instead, she deepened her advocacy, especially for queer women of color navigating visibility in media. Today, Jessica Clarke continues to defy the industry's quiet erasure of lesbian identity. She does not shout for attention, she exists with intention. In every role, every interview, and every bold photo, she reminds us that representation is not about pleasing everyone. It is about telling the truth. And speaking of fearless truth-tellers, the next name on our list gave voice to a Disney legend, and then gave voice to herself. Millions knew her as Moana, brave, radiant, and fearlessly independent. But when Auli'i Cravalho came out as bisexual in a simple TikTok video, it reminded everyone that even Disney heroines have very real journeys off-screen. No special effects, no ballads, just a girl with a phone answering a fan's question with one word that carried weight: yes. At just 16, Auli'i became a household name. The pressure that came with voicing an iconic character could have pushed her into silence, into safety. Instead, she leaned into honesty. Her coming out was quiet, no press tour, no confetti, but deeply intentional. She knew exactly what kind of impact it would have. Queer kids, especially young Pacific Islanders, saw someone who looked and sounded like them, simply living her truth. Since then, Auli'i has continued to break molds. Whether acting, singing, or speaking out, she carries herself with a calm confidence that resonates far beyond her age. She is not trying to be a headline. She's building a legacy, one where authenticity matters more than applause. And now, from a calm presence to a chaotic firecracker, we meet a woman who made queer identity look loud, messy, and wildly unforgettable. What happens when a bisexual, internet-famous, chaos-embracing influencer decides to come out during a feud, in a tweet, and on TikTok? All in the same week? You get Tana Mongeau, and nothing about her story was quiet. She has been called everything: problematic, iconic, unpredictable, raw. But Tana has also been something many others in the spotlight struggled to be: honest. In June 2020, she shared that she was pansexual, attracted to all genders, and she did it the only way she knows how, with flair and very little filter. Her relationships with both men and women have often made headlines, but behind the mess was a young woman discovering herself in real time, with millions watching, judging, and sometimes relating. Tana never claimed to be a role model, but maybe that is what makes her matter. She talks about sexuality the way many actually experience it, as a fluid, imperfect, sometimes confusing process. And in a culture that demands perfection before acceptance, she gave people permission to be messy and proud. And now, let us shift from YouTube drama to a surprising moment of tenderness. When reality TV gave us one of the most groundbreaking queer love stories on primetime. In the middle of a rose-strewn beach set, under the blinding lights of Bachelor in Paradise, Demi Burnett dropped to one knee, not for a man, but for a woman named Kristen. In that moment, the long-running reality franchise broke its own mold, and millions of viewers saw something they had never seen before. A queer love story, raw and real, unfolding where no one expected it. Demi had entered the Bachelor universe like any other contestant, flirty, witty, full of fire. But halfway through the season, she opened up about someone waiting for her back home. A woman. When Kristen was brought onto the show, it marked the first time the franchise embraced a same-sex romance on screen. There were tears, there was doubt, there was love, honest and unfiltered. Their eventual engagement, though short-lived, became a watershed moment for LGBTQ+ visibility in reality TV. What made Demi's story so powerful was not just the relationship. It was the courage it took to live it in front of an audience trained to expect a fairy tale ending with a groom. She did not just rewrite the rules. She showed that queer love deserves the same stage, the same music, the same camera angles. And next, we meet a singer who blended mystery, music, and identity into a message far louder than any interview ever could. For years, she wore tuxedos like armor and sang in metaphors that hinted, teased, and danced around the truth. But when Janelle Monáe finally dropped the mask in 2018, her message was crystal clear. I'm pansexual, and I live by my own rules. It was not just a statement, it was a declaration of radical self-love. Janelle's rise to stardom was anything but predictable. A genre-defying musician, sci-fi visionary, and red carpet disruptor, she built a universe where queerness, blackness, and womanhood could all coexist and thrive. Her music told stories most artists would not touch, and her image challenged everything from gender norms to industry polish. When she later came out as non-binary, it was less of a shift and more of a confirmation. She had always existed beyond the binary. Now she was simply naming it. More than a pop icon, Monáe is a cultural architect. She has never asked for approval, only space, and in claiming it, she has made room for millions more. Her legacy is not just about music or fashion, it is about liberation. And coming up next, we turn to a woman whose humor once made us laugh at awkward dates, until she surprised the world with a love story of her own. Nobody saw it coming, not because she was hiding, but because she had always made her queerness feel like just another part of the story. When Abbi Jacobson, co-creator and star of Broad City, announced her engagement to Olympic soccer player Jodie Balfour, the internet reacted with surprise, and then with absolute joy. Known for playing hilariously awkward, messy characters, Abbi brought a new kind of female voice to comedy, one that was imperfect, unapologetic, and wildly relatable. In real life, her journey was just as grounded. She quietly came out as bisexual in 2018, casually dropping the fact in interviews as if to say, "Yeah, this is me. Next question." That kind of low-key honesty became her signature. There was no big spectacle, just a consistent commitment to being herself, whether on screen or off. What makes Abbi's story powerful is its normalcy. No headlines, no labels screaming for attention. Just two women, in love, planning a future together. And in a world that still sensationalizes queer relationships, her calm authenticity is revolutionary in its own way. Now, from down-to-earth comedy to Olympic grit, let us meet a woman whose journey from elite athletics to motherhood has made her a symbol of strength, both on and off the field. Not every coming-out story makes headlines. Some are quietly lived, and that is what makes them powerful. Claudia van den Heiligenberg, a decorated European athlete, never held a press conference or wrote a manifesto. She simply lived her truth, as a lesbian, as a partner, and eventually, as a mother. Claudia spent years building a reputation in sports, strong, disciplined, respected. But what earned her a different kind of admiration was her openness about her personal life. In 2018, she married her longtime partner, Lucy Vonkova, and in 2021, they announced they were expecting their first child. That one piece of news, a queer couple starting a family together, was a quiet victory for LGBTQ+ representation in athletics. No controversy, no drama, just love. Claudia's story proves that visibility is not always about grand gestures. Sometimes it is about showing up fully in your everyday life, at work, at home, in your community. She is not just a role model for queer athletes. She is a reminder that pride can look like peace, commitment, and choosing love every single day. And next, we shift from European calm to old Hollywood glam, with a woman whose fashion fame and queer truth collided in the most public way. One photo, one kiss, and suddenly, Katherine McNeil was no longer just a supermodel. She was a headline. In 2009, paparazzi snapped a now iconic image of her kissing fellow Australian star Ruby Rose. The internet exploded, but while the tabloids speculated, Katherine simply smiled and confirmed what others tried to sensationalize. "Yes, I'm bisexual, always have been." By then, Katherine had already built a towering career. She had walked for Versace, fronted campaigns for D&G, and appeared on runways across the globe. But in an industry that thrives on image and illusion, her openness was rare and refreshing. Rather than brush the moment aside or let PR teams spin it, she claimed her truth with quiet elegance. Her engagement to Ruby was short-lived, ending in 2010, but it marked a moment when queerness in fashion could no longer be sidelined or hidden behind coded whispers. Today, Katherine McNeil continues to model, but her legacy goes beyond beauty. She helped redefine what it means to be visible in an industry that often trades in silence. Her truth was not loud, but it was undeniable. And now, let us meet a rising actress whose voice, both literal and metaphorical, has become one of the most precious in a new generation of queer storytelling. For Ella Hunt, the word queer was not just a label, it was a treasure. In a heartfelt 2021 interview, the young British actress described the term as something that made her feel safe, seen, and beautifully complex. It was not a press stunt or a social media drop. It was a quiet declaration of belonging, wrapped in warmth and intention. Ella's breakout performance in Anna and the Apocalypse, and later in Dickinson, introduced her as a fresh face with serious acting chops. But behind the camera, she was still learning how to fully embody herself. Coming out as queer was not about shocking fans. It was about giving language to something she had always carried. It was a moment of alignment, of stepping into the truth with soft strength, especially as someone growing up in a world that often demands clarity from queer people before they are ready. Her openness has since made her a symbol for a new generation, one that embraces fluidity, emotion, and nuance. Ella Hunt's queerness is not loud or performative. It is thoughtful, grounded, and honest. And now we move to a young woman who has grown up under the spotlight, but used her platform to proudly celebrate her fluid identity from a very early age. It happened at the family table, not in front of fans, cameras, or stages. On an episode of Red Table Talk, Willow Smith sat between her mother Jada and grandmother Adrienne and quietly said, "I love men and women." There was a pause. Then Jada smiled and nodded, "I'm with you." That one moment, unplanned, unrehearsed, became one of the most powerful examples of queer acceptance ever broadcast. Willow had always defied convention. She was a child star who walked away from fame, an artist unafraid to bend genres, and a thinker with questions far beyond her years. But coming out as someone who embraces polyamory and pansexuality was different. It was not just about music or rebellion, it was about identity. She spoke honestly about her desire for emotional freedom, about not wanting to be boxed into traditional structures. And she did it with clarity, softness, and a surprising maturity. Today, Willow represents a generation that views queerness not as a single statement, but as a lifelong journey. Her visibility matters, not because of her last name, but because of her fearless vulnerability. And now, for the final chapter of our list, we meet a woman whose acting chops and quiet strength have made her one of the most respected out voices in modern television. She fell in love with the woman who wrote her story. Literally. Samira Wiley, breakout star of Orange is the New Black, found herself portraying a queer character, Pussy, whose storyline touched millions. Behind the scenes, the woman crafting that narrative was Lauren Morelli, a lead writer on the show. What started as collaboration slowly became something more profound. And when Lauren came out as gay, she also came out for Samira. Their love story unfolded quietly, respectfully, two women navigating Hollywood, creation, and personal truth side by side. In 2017, they married in a stunning, joyful ceremony, turning fiction into reality. For Samira, who had long embraced her identity publicly, the union was more than a romantic milestone. It was a declaration that queer love, in all its authenticity, could thrive, not just survive, in front of and behind the camera. Today, Samira Wiley stands as one of the most respected out actresses on television, with roles in The Handmaid's Tale and beyond. But her legacy is not just in awards or screen credits. It is in visibility, vulnerability, and love. She reminds us that representation matters most when it is real, layered, and lived. And in closing this list of 25 remarkable women, she offers the perfect final note: that queerness is not just about coming out. It is about coming home to yourself. And there you have it. 25 women who are not just beautiful or talented, but bold enough to live their truth in front of the world. From red carpets to quiet living rooms, they remind us that visibility matters, that love takes many forms, and that authenticity is always powerful. If any of their stories moved you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video to keep the conversation going. We'll see you in the next one.